As you could have had 4 USB 3. What's up YouTube, Lysergic here, and today we're going to take a look at the Fractal Design Arc XL PC case. Fractal introduced this line of products with the Arc Midi, and the Arc series in general is designed for maximum water cooling options, maximum fan capacity, all-in-one coolers, basically any kind of cooling solution that you can think of, this case can handle. So the Arc Midi originally was a tiny bit smaller than its larger counterpart, the Arc XL here, and you can really tell the difference. This thing is huge. You might not be able to see it now, but when I put a regular MATX chassis next to it, you can see just how big this thing is. It really is huge. It rivals, I would say, probably like the Corsair 900D and other cases of that caliber. This thing can actually accommodate up to XL ATX and eATX motherboards. So when I say that you can really fit anything you want in here, pretty much anything you can think of you really can fit in here. So I wanted to wait, but I did get a little excited and unbox the case early, so this isn't going to be a full unboxing. But I do just want to take a quick look at the overall outside aesthetics of the case itself. I think this is a really good looking case. Fractal has a really good track record of not being, too much. So many cases look so gaudy and like they just belong in a 13-year-old's room, and Fractal has a good way of making things minimalistic but still very, very beautiful. And you know what, I'm not even going to take off points for the faux brushed aluminum finish in the front. It does look like real brushed aluminum. It's not. It's just plastic, but for me it's good enough. And like I said, this isn't a flashy case. It aims to be minimalistic and still, a good centerpiece to your room at the same time. So I'll definitely give them points for that. Now, just to emphasize once again how big this thing really is, I didn't have anything big enough to stand the camera on while I looked at the front I/O, so I had to turn the case on on its side. So starting at the bottom here, we have 2 USB 2.0 ports, 2 USB 3.0 super speed ports. It's a little bit of a compromise. It would be nice to have all 4 USB 3.0, but this is something that we see with a lot of cases nowadays. We have a very, very small reset button, like super small. You probably won't even be able to see it once YouTube compression murders the video. Something you would really want a pencil for, but most people will probably just be resetting through your operating system or just using the power button, which is fortunately a lot bigger. The power button's got a little LED right there. And then moving up, we have your headphone jack, microphone jack, and this is a nice little addition right here. We have a 3-speed fan controller, and it's labeled with 4 volts, 7 volts, and 12 volts, which is very nice because I've seen fan controllers that, actually cost extra that don't have any label as to how much power you're actually putting through the fans if they're PWM or 3-pin control, whatever it is. But it's nice to actually know, what settings you're actually using instead of just a 1, 2, 3, up to 10. So that's nice. Moving down to the other side, we have this very nice mesh grill taking up the rest of the top of the case. And it's secured by 2 thumb screws in the back, and these 2 top thumb screws are actually different thumb screws than the rest of the case. So make sure you keep these ones separate because the threads are a little tiny bit longer than the rest of them. So this is just 2 thumb screws. It pops right off. And under here we have all of our fan mounting options. There are a ton of options on this top grill right here. I mean, you can probably see all the different little screw holes. It comes with a 140mm fluid bearing fan, and from what I've heard, the Silent Series R2 Fractal fans are actually not that bad. But when I build in this case, I'm going to be replacing all 3 with Noctuas and eventually putting a triple rad on top. Which you might be saying, whoa, triple rad, yeah, it's a pretty nice feature. It does extend right up into the first 5.25-inch bay there. But honestly, who needs 4 5.25-inch bay devices? I would wager probably not most people, and being able to fit a triple rad on top of your case is a very, very nice thing to include. Other than that, you could do either a single 200mm fan here, or you could do 2 120s, 3 120s, or 2 140s actually it looks like too. So you could fit a 280mm rad in there. And probably once we look on the inside, you could probably fit push-pull with all those options, which really is incredible. But we'll get to looking at how impressive that is later. On the other side of this grill here, we have a full mesh dust filter. And that's a trend that you're going to be seeing in the rest of the case. Actually, every single intake on this case is got nice dust filters like this. So that's really, there's nothing to complain about there. That's so nice because that's one of Fractal Design's trademarks, is that everything they do is made for silence and no compromises, no holds barred performance. Okay, moving on to the front of the case, in the foreground here, you'll see you're greeted with a very nice dust filter / mesh front panel type deal. And that's very easy to remove. You just push the 2 push pins in there. And I've heard a couple reports of those push pins breaking. They are just little plastic nubs, but they feel pretty sturdy to me, and I haven't had any problems with them so far. And on the bottom, it is secured by little tabs that you have to slide in first to actually get it in there. So behind that, we got another R2 series fluid bearing fan. This one's 140 millimeter as well, but there are also in there 120 millimeter mounting holes as well. So you could definitely fit a 240 millimeter radiator in there in either push or push-pull configuration, which again, there's so much room for push-pull and thick radiators. You could definitely fit an 80 mil radiator in there for sure, no doubts about it. And I would imagine that you could probably also fit 2 times 140 millimeter radiator in there, which would be a 280, but it doesn't look like there's native mounting holes on the bottom for that. But I would imagine that you could probably make it work if you tried hard enough. So to get this little dust filter back in, which once again, full dust filter, just like the rest of the case, very nice. You just slide those 2 tabs back in the bottom and pop them in. And real quick, moving up and looking at the top, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.25 inch expansion bays. Well, like I said about the top there, if you have a 360 millimeter, that's triple 120 fan rad installed, you probably won't be able to fit anything in this top expansion bay here, but I don't have a triple 120 rad to test that. But like I said, you got 4 5.25 inch expansion bays. Unless you need 4 Blu-ray drives, or you're using drive converters like I will be to mount your regular 3.5 inch hard drives in these bays so you can take the drive cages themselves out, you shouldn't really have a problem with lack of 5.25 inch bays. Usually that's not a problem. Once again, I had to tilt the case on its side because it's just so damn big to get the whole back of it in this shot. So starting at the bottom here, first we're going to take a look at this little dust filter. So that's the 3rd dust filter. That's 3 dust filters in one case, boys. That's a lot of dust filters. Fractal Design, always thinking of us. That way you won't have to waste so much canned air in keeping your case clean, and all your components will stay nice and shiny. This one is not the same as the other ones. It's kind of like a lighter mesh, but I would assume that's for the power supply fan because this is going to be closer to the ground. So that's that. You can slide that back right in there. And when we take a look at the inside, you'll see that this dust filter also covers the bottom radiator mount, that you could fit a bottom 120 millimeter rad in there. But I generally don't recommend putting a bottom rad in. There's just not as much airflow on the bottom of the case close to the ground, especially if your computer is going to be on carpet or, you know, really close to a wood floor. But they do include these nice little silver feet that are pretty far off the ground, so that even if you did include the bottom, you know, if you did put a bottom rad on there, it probably wouldn't be too much of a problem because you have these nice rubber feet. So I've been noticing a trend with power supply brackets on the back of newer cases. A lot of them, like my Cooler Master Half XB, has the power supply bracket offset so that you could fit a 1200 watt or a 1600 watt behemoth of a power supply in there without interfering with any of your internal components. But with all the space the Arc XL is offering you, I don't think you're going to be having any problems with power supply length when you're building inside there. And on the case it says it can accommodate up to a 200 millimeter power supply without interfering with the bottom radiator slot or bottom fan slot, or if you move the HDD cage over to there, which you could do as well. So moving on to expansion slots, we got, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 frickin' expansion slots. What you need 9 expansion slots for, I have no idea. That's more than enough for Quad SLI, but I mean, that's what we have the XL and eATX motherboard standard for. You can accommodate those motherboards on this case. On the top here, there's a little vent where the thumb screws are. I have no idea what that's for, but I would assume it's just another case of increased airflow. Moving over here, we have one more fan. This is a 140 millimeter as well, so that's 3 140 millimeter fans the case includes. And then down here, you have your little slot for your I/O panel. Up here, there's another case. There's another vent as well, and these two right here are the only ones that aren't dust filtered in the entire case. So, like I said, dust probably isn't going to be a problem, especially when this is probably going to be where your exhaust is coming out, unless you have some sort of custom loop installed, or maybe even a more fancy AIO or something like that. But generally, dust is not going to be a problem on the Arc XL. Moving on to the window side of the case, the side panel window is kind of smoked out. It's definitely not a transparent window. There's definitely some kind of smoky gloss to it, but it's not too hard to see through. With the lights on in the camera, it's going to be a little bit harder to see through than it is in real life. But if you have, lights or LEDs in there, you'll definitely be able to see your components fair enough. And hey, what doesn't have LEDs on it nowadays? Even your graphics cards do, so you won't really have to worry about that. You should be able to see in there just fine. So to take a broad look at the inside of the case before we get into detail, you have pretty much everything that I outlined before. You've got your front fan here, which is a 140. You got another 140 up top. If you already had a 280 millimeter rad, you could take both of those and put them up here and add your rad on the bottom of that, or do a push-pull configuration, whatever you want to do. Up here, your 5.25 inch bays. And we have your motherboard area, which, like I said, can accommodate up to XL and eATX. Around the whole motherboard tray, there are tons and tons of grommets, and these are really good quality grommets. I've seen cheap ones that feel like they're going to fall apart every time you touch them, so that's a nice little addition. And hanging out here, we have your front panel USB 3.0 header, and all your front I/O stuff like USB, power button, reset switch, all that good stuff. And then the other fan cords are hanging around right there. Going back to the front inside of the case, this is the other side of that dust filter. We have your 140 millimeter Silent Series R2 fan there, and you got another slot down there. So since these fans are actually on the front of the case in that little indentation, you have plenty of space for a radiator here. If I just back the camera up a little bit, I mean, you could fit a huge reservoir there, probably, like a T-Virus or one of those other giant reservoirs with the pump on the bottom, and still have room for a thick radiator with the fans in the indentation here. Maybe not push-pull, but if you didn't have your radiator, your reservoir there, and you had your reservoir up here by the 5.25 inch bays, you could probably even fit push-pull with an 80 millimeter thick radiator, which is really impressive for, any case other than a 900D for that matter. Moving on to the motherboard area, you have just about every kind of standoff configuration that you could possibly ever wish for. Like I said, up to and including XL and eATX motherboards, which is what those 9 expansion slots over here are for, whatever you're going to use those for. And something that I was very pleased to see are these really, really nice grommets. I've seen in other cases the cheapest, crappiest grommets you've ever seen in your life that feel like they're going to fall apart the first time that you stick a wire through them, which really kind of sucks. But Fractal definitely didn't skimp on the grommets, which is a small thing, it's not a game changer, but it's always nice to see. Your 9 expansion slots and their thumb screws are all very easy to access. I've seen in competitor cases of similar, size and target audience that sometimes they have like a little plate or, indentation over the thumb screws that makes them a pain in the ass to reach with a screwdriver or your fingers. They are thumb screws, so they should be fairly easy to unscrew. So that's not a problem in this case. And down here for the power supply, there are there are 2 rubber feet that your power supply will stand up on. You can remove these, and they're not held on very well. They're almost like this really light rubber, but that does keep your power supply up off the ground a little bit so that it won't get any dust in there, because that is a very quick way to kill your power supply, is to plop your case down on a carpet, and 2 or 3 days later your power supply fan grill is full of dust, and then you have to go buy a new power supply, or worse, you short out your case. Moving over here, you got all your front I/O stuff, USB 3.0, front USB, HD audio, reset switch, power LED, all that good stuff. Looking at the top of the case, here are all your mounting options for the top. Once again, it's a 140 mil fan that's included up there, and it can include up to 3 120 millimeter fans for a 360 millimeter radiator. But if you look in there, it's kind of hard to get an angle on it. If you do stick a 360 millimeter radiator in there, it is going to go in the top of that 5.25 inch bay. Like I said, you may still be able to fit a device in there, but like I said, you're really not going to have 4 5.25 inch bay devices. I really just can't see a scenario where that's necessary except in very extreme edge cases. In the front, I did take out my hard drive bays because I'm going to have a radiator in the front there eventually, and I'm going to mount my 2 regular 3.5 inch hard drives on the top in the disk drive bays. But I'm going to do that so I can fit a big old radiator there, and that way I don't have to worry about putting the hard drive bay down here on the front over that last fan position, and I'll have plenty of clearance for my power supply. So once again, there are just so many options that you have with this case. You really can just reconfigure it any way you want to fit whatever you want in there, and no matter what you do, you're going to have pretty solid options for cable management and, you know, keeping your case really nice and clean looking. This is what the hard drive cages look like. They can fit up to 4 in each of them, and they are pretty easy to quick swap. The last Fractal design case in the ARC series had some kind of silly way that the drive bays were designed that you had to take both side panels off to remove the drives, and that won't be a problem in this one. They're pretty simple. They're rigid drive bays, which is really nice. Those kind of flimsy plastic ones always gave me a crappy, you know, first impression of them when you could just bend them in your hand. And they do have nice little rubber anti-shock mounts. So that's cool, and they're really easy to pop in and out. It's just a quick tensile pull on both sides and they pop right out. If I can get this one in here from this awkward angle. They pop right in. It's very easy with 2 fingers just to pop them right back out and pop a drive in there. I just want to illustrate again real quick how incredible the build quality of this case is and how much stuff you could actually fit inside here. Even this is just a MATX, you know, regular square form factor motherboard, but sitting inside the Fractal ARC XL, I mean, in a mid-tower case, this would fit normally as any other normal MATX motherboard was. But when you put this thing inside the ARC XL, it looks ridiculous. It looks like a little toy compared to all the space you have in this case. And look at all the area you have for cable management, routing. Even with a normal ATX size motherboard, which is only this long, you still have so much space to route your cables, so much space for water cooling. If you had a radiator up here, you could have a push-pull configuration, probably even with a thick radiator, and you wouldn't even barely interfere with your DIMM slots. That's something that we haven't seen in almost any case. I think the Corsair 900D is the only one that could even possibly compete with this case as far as water cooling, you know, options and abilities. The only thing about build quality that I could even possibly complain about is that the majority of the case is designed with rivets as opposed to screws. So if you wanted to completely disassemble the case, you would be pulling rivets out, which really that only applies as a negative for hardcore modders. Most people aren't going to be doing much other than building in the case. I don't see many people cutting holes in it actually. But you know, you do have to take a couple points off for that not being completely disassemblable, but for most people that's a complete non-issue. I mean, look at this thing. You could fit like 9 Sound Blaster Audigies in here. You could have 9 tuple sound cards. That's real expandability. Kudos to you, Fractal Design. And last but not least, we have the back of this behemoth. There's not too much space as far as width for cable routing goes, but with all the grommets and options and directions that you could route your cables in here, they actually even include, you know, a quick idea for how you could route your cables from your front I/O to your motherboard with the tie downs already included. But these are just normal twist ties. I'm sure you guys have, you know, your fancy Velcro zip ties and all that crap. But other than that, the really cool feature back here is the 2 little SSD mounts that are removable. You can unscrew them if you don't need them, but why would you have your SSDs mounted in the front of the case if you don't have to? You can plug your SSD in either way back here, and there are 4 screws on the top and bottom to just screw it in right back there. And with all these grommets, there's no reason why you can't just throw your SATA cable and your power cable right in there, plug your SSD in, and then never have to worry about it again. And if you want to unscrew it, you just pop off the back panel, unscrew the screws, and pop that baby out. With SSDs, there's no moving parts, so you don't have to worry about, you know, anti-vibration and all that stuff. So there's really no drawback to that. I think it's really useful, and it's a nice little feature to include, so no points off there. Also, they hide the fan controller up here. It's tied down and it doesn't come through to the front. So if you're building in this case and you're looking for the fan controller wire, you can't find it, it's hiding up there. They tied it back. Okay guys, that's going to do it for my review and feature breakdown of the Fractal Design ARC XL case. If you guys want to see me build inside this case, over the next couple days I'm going to be backing up all my data and doing a full brain transplant of the computer I have now and just moving it all over into this case, and that's going to include my 2 GTX 980s and my overclocked i7-4790K. So I'm going to do a full build guide in that video, show the whole process of me putting it together and all the fun and fuck-ups that I have. So that's going to be pretty interesting to watch. And then after it's all done, I'm going to do a bunch of detailed benchmarks and, you know, have a whole conclusion of the whole thing and all that. So please like and subscribe so you can see that, and you can also see when I post new videos about PC gaming, PC hardware, a little bit of games journalism, you know, whatever, a little bit of everything. I think you guys will enjoy it. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Lysergic signing out.